So, a while back guys, the NS Operatives were given a pretty major overhaul to their infantry weapons, and look, I've been keen to review these suckers for an incredibly long time now, and from this point on, we're going to start getting these reviews underway. So how about we kick things off here on a strong note. G'day there once again viewers, this is your mate Kamikaze78 here, and today we're going to be taking an in-depth look at the XMG-100, the default LMG available to NS Operatives. So yeah, it's been a while since we've done a weapon review here on the channel, and I know that a lot of you are pretty familiar with how we like to do things here, but for those of you who haven't been initiated yet, here's a quick rundown of how this video is going to go. Firstly, we're going to do a quick and dirty TLDR for the weapon for those who aren't really interested in sitting through 10-minute plus minutes of weapon review nonsense. It appeals to the YouTube algorithm if you stick around, but I won't be offended if you clock out at that point either. For those who are incredibly keen on getting into the nitty and the gritty, we will follow up with a deep dive into the statistics for the weapon, along with some insights on how to best use the weapon based on those statistics. And then we'll wrap up by taking a look at the attachment options that are on offer here and how you can best improve the weapon for optimal killing potential. But let's get started off here with a quick and cheeky TLDR for everything you need to know about the XMG-100. Okay, so while NS weapon naming conventions look like they belong on a barcode and aren't exactly that exciting to look at, the XMG-100 is certainly an exciting weapon to use, and arguably pushes its way like a brute into the realm of one of the best light machine guns in the game. No questions asked. We all know that the default LMGs in Planetside 2 as they stand right now are some of the strongest in the game, and the XMG-100 is without a doubt punching well above its weight into this league of top tier light machine guns. Everything from the damage output, to the recoil pattern, to the hipfire accuracy, to the uptime, thanks to its magazine and reload time combo, makes this a weapon that will quickly place itself as one of your go-to picks on the battlefield. There were very few situations where I found this weapon out of place, and because of that, I didn't buy another LMG for my NSO character until I Araxiumed this one. And that's pretty rare for me. I like to collect my weapons, I like to have an arsenal on display and available to me so I can switch in and out between weapons wherever I need to. I didn't need to do that with the XMG-100. It handles crowd control and choke point defense well, all the while fitting the role of a nice quote-unquote shock trooper assault-oriented weapon as well. Now admittedly, its raw DPS doesn't quite match up to par with what comes from the likes of the T9 Carve, or the MSWR, or the Orion, or even the LA1 Anchor. But thanks to that ridiculously accurate profile that lets you chain headshots even under the longest bursts of fire that seem almost suspiciously long, it's incredibly easy to make up for that loss, and comes with a pretty high skill ceiling that lets you take this weapon for the long run as your primary. And of course, like any light machine gun, you need to make sure you get out of the habit of reloading after every kill, as the magazine is pretty lengthy all things considered, but once you get over that hurdle, there is simply not a lot to complain about here at all with this weapon. So let's take a look at how the thing operates. Let's kick things off here with the damage profile, and being honest, things get pretty interesting right out of the gate here. We have a maximum damage of 143 out to 15 meters, yes, 15 meters, with a minimum damage extending out to 112 at the 75 meter mark. So we drop a total of 2 damage tiers here, yes, but the maximum damage model extends out to 15 meters by default, by comparison to the more standard 10 meters you would find on most other weapons in the game, which means that yes, the weapon comes practically with a free of charge soft point ammunition attachment baked in to the weapon's maximum damage range. And in addition to that, the minimum damage range sits about 10 meters further than other comparable weapons from other factions as well. Combine all this, and you've got a pretty adaptable platform when it comes to engagement distances as far as the damage is concerned. So as far as bullet to kill is concerned, well, you've got a 7-shot kill within 15 meters, an 8-shot kill out to the 48 meter mark, and a 9-shot kill as you creep past 48 meters all the way out to the 75 meter minimum damage range mark. But yeah, 9 consecutive shots at that range is some pretty adventurous thinking all things considered. Throw the damage into the melting pot with the rate of fire of 714 rounds per minute, or 11.9 rounds per second. You have a theoretical time to kill of 0.51 seconds at the 15 meter mark, 0.59 seconds at the 48 meter mark, and a whopping 0.68 seconds at the 75 meter mark. Admittedly, those aren't the best in the world when you look in the grand scheme of things, but more on that shortly. But hey, if you thought the damage was something decent, then you ain't seen nothing yet. Recoil-wise, this weapon is a laser beam, as you probably gathered by the gameplay, and there's just no other way to put it. It's incredibly consistent, and if you totally removed Cone of Fire Bloom from the game, it would be more than capable at dumping the majority of your magazine on target and keeping your crosshair pretty much centered should you need to. The recoil is just that controllable. Now, that's not to say you should at least maintain some trigger discipline, because hey, Cone of Fire Bloom is a thing in this game, but yeah, let's just say that this isn't the hardest weapon to control in the game, not by a long shot. Just pull down on the mouse, burst appropriately, and you'll do just fine. Stats-wise, the weapon sports a 0.4 degree vertical kick per shot, which is actually like for like with the T9 Carve's recoil pattern. In fact, when you look at the rest of the recoil stats here, they are pretty in line with the T9 Carve for the most part, obviously stretching for better or for worse in certain areas. We have a 2.25 times first shot multiplier, which is actually a little heavier than the Carve, giving the weapon an effective 0.9 degree kick on the first shot of every burst, which I'll admit is not fantastic for bursting continuously, but it could also be worse. Horizontally, we have a consistent 0.22 degree kick per shot. No minimum or maximum deviation here, which is nice. It's a consistent 0.22 degree kick every time. And that's governed by a 0.8 horizontal recoil tolerance. So the weapon can only kick 2 times in the same direction before being forced back in the opposite direction. Which I've just got to throw out there real quickly, is a big part as to why this weapon feels so simple to use. Throw in the fact that there's no recoil angle, and you have yourself a juicy combo that creates one of the most stable LMG platforms in the game. I mean, hell, take a look at the recoil chart on the left of the screen right now. It's straight up with a little bit of horizontal deviation, and that can easily be sorted out by some appropriate bursting. The Cone of Fire is also pretty standard when it comes to the aiming down sights accuracy, but there is the added bonus of an awesome hipfire Cone of Fire that actually pits this weapon as a better hipfire LMG, even up against the infamous MSWR or LA1 Anchor. Just something to keep in mind here as we continue, and more on that later. As far as your ammo stats are concerned, we have a very generous 80 round magazine here in place with a total of 240 rounds in the reserve, which, full transparency, I find myself burning through really quickly, so make sure you find an engineer nearby to keep yourself topped up. In tandem, we have a 4.5 second short reload time and a 4.9 second long reload time to boot, which is also relatively efficient for the mag size it's complementing. Wrapping things up, we have a 500 meters per second muzzle velocity and a 0.5 times aiming down sights movement multiplier speed. So when you break it all down, that's what you get as your default LMG when you first connect your new aggressive toaster to the Araxis intranet. And I've got to say, this is a beast. From start to finish, this is one hell of a weapon, and there's a few elements at work here that get us to that final product. For one, the recoil. Now, yeah, the vertical recoil is on par with that of the T9 Carve for intensity, but where it wins out is its horizontal recoil. Now, yes, horizontal recoil is more intense per shot comparatively here, but the horizontal tolerance keeps it in check more consistently versus the Carve, and it shows. The fact that the weapon can only bump in a single direction twice before being forced back to center mass is a quality to look out for in weapons, as it means you'll focus on the one element of recoil that is relatively easy to counter. That, of course, being the vertical recoil, and because of that, I feel a lot more confident holding down the trigger at relatively longer ranges with the XMG-100. I mean, bursting at times feels like it's almost unnecessary, where with other weapons it feels like it would be a necessity. But because I only have to pull down on my mouse, and I don't have to worry about overly correcting for an overly excited horizontal push, it makes the weapon easy to pick up. And when you take into consideration that relatively punishing first shot multiplier as well, the cumulative recoil from overly bursting may actually keep the weapon from performing at its optimal time to kill, which is a great segue into the time to kill side of things, guys, because as we pointed out earlier, this weapon does sport a slightly longer time to kill when you compare it against some of the other quote-unquote meta weapons out there. And there's an obvious way to counteract that. Say it with me for those in the back. Go for headshots. And that does sound like an easy cop-out kind of an answer, I get that. But everything about this weapon points towards that being the answer to unlock the weapon's true potential, going for headshots. And yes, I admit, you can make that argument with absolutely every weapon in the game, but the XMG-100 seems to be built entirely around the prospect of training you to go for headshots. And once you start doing exactly that and edging your crosshair just that little bit higher than you normally would, the weapon goes from good to fantastic. Seriously, make use of the easy to use recoil, hit those headshots, and you will thank me later. You will see health bars disappear like nobody's business. One thing the LMG has got going for it as well is its exceptional hipfire. And while I've spent some serious time here going on and on about the weapon's aiming down sights accuracy, the hipfire is definitely worth boasting about. Our stationary cone of fire for the hipfire here matches that of the best-in-class weapons out there like the MSWR and the Anchor for hipfire accuracy. But the XMG-100 actually takes it to the next level by having a better moving hipfire cone of fire across the board by a pretty decent margin. And what's even better is that even after you mount a laser sight to the XMG-100 and an advanced laser sight to the LA1 Anchor and the MSWR, the moving hipfire cone of fire is still more accurate on the XMG. And say you are playing a bit loosey-goosey and you're hip-firing a lot, you've got more ammo in the magazine to work with on the XMG by default against these other weapons, which means you don't need to run the extended magazine attachment, and you can just run that laser sight to make the most of that hip-fire. Hell, the hip-fire is so damn reliable on this weapon that I even find myself accurately and consistently scoring headshots while hip-firing. Very few LMGs in this game can do that reliably, especially to this standard. And on the topic of ammo, you do get a generous 80 round magazine here with a reload time to boot that doesn't quite cross the threshold of needing an IKEA instruction manual to complete, which gives the weapon some incredible uptime for crowd control efficiency if you can wield your accuracy to your favor. I hate to break it to you guys, but as far as LMGs go for NSO, this is kind of the gold standard based on my experience so far, and everything about this weapon kind of builds it up to be a tool that will happily face any challenge you throw at it. Now, no, it doesn't offer the most punishing time to kill weapons out there, but nano system weapons have never been about that. They've always been about consistency, and this weapon definitely hits its stride in that department. But with that said, let's quickly talk about some of the attachment options you can throw on this weapon. The XMG-100 has access to a 1x through to 3.4x optics, including a 1x RNV, a compensator, a flash suppressor, the dark light flashlight, the extended magazine, forward grip, laser sight, as well as soft point and high velocity ammunitions. And with the ammo types there, I just want to quickly clarify something. Yes, with soft point ammunition, your maximum damage range increases to 20 meters. So for God's sakes, take the soft point ammunition on this weapon. I tell you what guys, this thing with soft point ammunition built on is just an absolute powerhouse in CQC. I mean, for God's sakes, every other 143 damage profile LMG in the game would be at best reaching its maximum damage range at the 15 meter mark, which means that you are going to be more lethal at longer ranges by comparison to your opposition, no matter how you look at it, if you're running this LMG with soft point ammo. Seriously, take soft point, use that extended range you got access to, and I promise you it will do you absolute wonders. High velocity ammo is great for open field fights where you've got a lot of moving targets, but I find that the soft point ammo just outweighs it as far as pros are concerned. And I'm sure you saw this coming as well, but definitely take a laser sight on this weapon. Seriously, the hipfire is too good to pass up, and it gives you that sort of counter to that oh shit moment when someone surprises you from around a corner, and it means you're actually able to accurately maintain shots where required as well. Now, as far as your barrel attachments are concerned, it's a bit of a two-way street here. The compensator is awesome to take as you're getting used to the weapon and as you try to dial in on that recoil. I mean, hey, with a compensator, it makes handling the vertical recoil a lot easier, which means you're able to change shots a little bit more frequently as well if you struggle with vertical recoil. But as you learn to get a hold of the vertical recoil and as you learn to really dial in this weapon, taking a flash suppressor is actually a good pick as well, because it then means that the downsides to hipfire accuracy that a compensator brings on will keep your hipfire accuracy that's only being improved by a laser sight anyway, just that little bit more potent as well. So a flash suppressor for the long game, but a compensator if you do need that little bit of assistance for the meantime handling that vertical recoil. There is no harm in taking that compensator to learn with the weapon. And of course, as far as sights are concerned, this is always preferential really, but I find a 1x to 2x sight being more than fine for this weapon. It is at the end of the day more built for CQC combat, and the 1x does fine and 2x if I'm absolutely pushing it, but for the love of God, don't take a 3.4x on this gun. It simply does not work. But guys, with all that said, that's going to conclude our first of a very long series of weapon reviews for the NS Operatives new armory. I can't tell you guys how excited I am to finally be diving into this series of weapons. I've been looking forward to it for a very long time, and I want you guys to let me know in the comment section down below what weapon you want to see reviewed next. Upvote the hell out of the suggestions you want to see, guys, and I'll go ahead and make a list of priorities to cover first things first. As always, guys, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. It goes a long way to support the channel, and if you're new here, consider subscribing. It keeps you up to date with whenever we release content, whether it be a live stream or a YouTube video. As always, guys, social media links are linked in the description down below, so be sure to go check us out there as well. Once again, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Peace out, and I will see you guys on the next one. Take care, guys. Have a good one.